Okay, we're going to tie shoes today, and this dates back to when I was in Boy Scouts, and I learned how to tie a square knot, and they said, oh, don't do a granny knot. And here's the difference, okay? If you do a square knot, it's like going right over left, and then you go left over right, you tuck it on through, and look what a square knot looks like. The two strands on this side both come right together underneath this loop, and the two strands on this side come out right together on top of this loop. Okay, and a square knot holds pretty well. Depends on the material. If it's a real slippery material, it sometimes doesn't hold, but it holds a lot better than a granny. Now, a granny seems like the same thing, except after you've done the first half the same, you do the second half like this, and whoops, look at that. These are not together. One comes on top and one comes on the bottom of this loop. And notice if you just sort of pull it tight, it has a tendency to just lay crosswise like that. Now, I was camping with the Boy Scouts in the rain, sitting in my tent, long time, nothing to do but play with my boots. And I found that when you tie a regular bow, what you're doing is either tying a bowed version of a square knot, or it might come out a bowed version of a granny knot. And look at that. A granny knot, if your bows tend to line up along your foot instead of crosswise, probably because you have a bowed version of a granny knot. Now let's see that this is a granny knot. If I pull it on through, so take the loops out, look at that. You can tell it's a granny knot. It tends to go this way, and one is underneath and one's on top over here, one's underneath and one's on the top over here. If you do the bow the other way, notice how it comes out straight across your foot, and if you pull the loop out, that's a square knot. Okay, so the first step is to figure out which kind of knot you're tying. And there's a simple way to fix it. So you have a habit, you've tied this so many times most likely, that you have a habit of tying it a certain way. And however you tie it, just tie it like you normally do, and then let's look at what happens here. If you just pull out the bow and check, is it a granny or is it a square? If it's a square knot, pat yourself on the head and quit. You're done, because you already are doing it right. About half the population, I'm guessing, is actually doing a granny knot though, because it's just a matter of which way you do it on the first half versus the second half. Now, of the two parts of tying your shoe, the part that's the most complicated is the second half. So if you're doing it this way and then like this, and you say, whoops, that's a granny, the easiest way to fix it is to look at the first half of the knot. Notice in this case I'm putting the right over the left, whereas this one's going on top. So what you need to do is do it the other way. If you reverse the first half of your knot and leave the second half the way you normally do it, you're going to get a square knot. So that's how to fix it. So if you were doing a granny, now you have a square. Okay. Another way to see just by when you're tying the knot, like let's just tie it the other way here. This is the way I normally tie it for the first half. When I make the bow for the second half, I can tell ahead of time which way it's going to come out, because see this strand right here? If I lay it down on the same side as that, notice that they're going to come out on the same side, so that's going to be a square knot. If I lay it on this side, they're going to come out on opposite sides of this loop. That's going to be a granny. So if you see the way it is here, and then lay it down on the same side as this strand right here, and then wrap it on around, you have a square knot. That's the first lesson. If you're tying a granny, reverse the first half of the knot, Leave the second half as you've been doing it all your life, and you'll have a knot that will come undone much less often.